I've hopped on the 357 bus with my free bus pass for a late lunch in Budley, Salterton at the Longboat Cafe. I've ordered some prawns, shrimps in a mug and fish chowder and a glass of wine, because I've done a really good morning's work editing videos and I'm hungry and I wanted to use my free bus pass. So I am counting my blessings, as indeed was Hilary Mantel, the writer who lived and worked in Budley, Salterton, I believe, for many years. It's remarkable to think that until the Victorian, or perhaps a little earlier, the era of semi-amateur and professional fossil hunters, there was, if I understand it correctly, there was no understanding at that point of the millions of years of evolutionary history, because of course, according to the biblical account of creation, of which there are two in Genesis, check them out, two different stories. Some might say myths, some might say it's all fact. The creationists would say, I believe it's all facts. And according to them, I think if you trace the lineage back to Adam, it comes to about 4,000 years of history. I don't know if that's 4,000 years in total or 4,000 years before Christ. I haven't actually. But the truth is, neither have I studied the fossil record and the gaps. So you have to mind the gaps, because it ain't necessarily so. And here I am at the Longboat Cafe for my shrimps in a boat and fish chowder. Well, I'm back from a blustery beach at Budley, Salterton, and my seafood chowder, which was very nice. And I didn't go fossil hunting in the cliffs. I didn't have my hammer, my archaeological hammer with me. I shall have to leave that to somebody else. In fact, isn't it true that most of what we take for being true is as not something that we have personally investigated? For example, fossils. Now, you may have your own collection and you may have studied them for years, and you are in a much better position than me to piece them together and come up with the age of the dinosaurs, for example. Somewhere between, I believe, 300 million years ago, and I think they went extinct 65 million years ago. How do I know this? Somebody else told me. Plus, I did recently visit the Natural History Museum in London to see a very big dinosaur called something like the Patagonia Gigantus. And it truly is Gigantus. And instead of looking at my mug, why not look at the mug and length of the bones, at any rate, of this huge dinosaur? Now, I take it, I won't say on good faith, I would take it on good fact. For example, radiocarbon dating techniques, that this ancient dinosaur, of which there were many in the Natural History Museum, is the age they say it is. I am no scholar or archaeologist or scientist, so I accept it, and this potentially clashes with the creationist biblical story, but I personally, spoiler alert or controversy alert, even as Christian, I don't have a problem with the age of the dinosaurs, or indeed the age of the Earth and the tectonic plates. I studied geography at uni and did physical geography in the first year, and we studied plate tectonics. And as you are now familiar with, the east coast of the Americas fits like a jigsaw piece into the west coast of Africa and Europe. And this is, we believe, due to continental drift with the plates, the topographic plates shuffling about on the currents of the molten magma underneath. You see, did I get a very long spade and dig down to the magma? No, I didn't. I took it, again, as fact from other researchers. How old is the cosmos since the Big Bang? Well, we are told 13.8 billion years at the last count, the last estimate. But that might be completely wrong, it turns out. Have we been misled by the scientists? Certainly for my lifetime. Well, actually, no, that's not true, my lifetime. I think since Edwin Hubble, in the late 50s, when I was just a nipper, determined that the universe was expanding. And so if you press rewind, it must have had a beginning, which they call the Big Bang, which incidentally wasn't big and it wasn't a bang, because there was no air for sound waves. It was, I believe, you see something else I've read. I have not investigated this myself with my thermometer when it was about 20 million degrees. But it was about 300,000 years after the Big Bang, we are told, before it had cooled down. The plasma had cooled down enough. It's the other state of matter. There's not just three states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. There are four. It's turning into a science lesson. Oh dear. So for the first 300,000 years or so, give or take, it was hot plasma, and it was too hot for photons to escape. I'm sort of making it up now. I'm doing it on the hoof. Actually, it was dark. There's no bang, and it wasn't light. Not in the way we're familiar with. So you see, it depends on what you're told. And now we're told, thanks to the James Webb Space Telescope, that we may be completely mistaken about the age of our universe being 13.8 billion, because there are some really, really old, large galaxies apparently out there, which are much older. So Brian Cox and the other photogenic presenters of science are having to sort of get the Tipex out on their script of the cosmos. Another thing that has had to shift is we might not be the only universe. We might be one of an infinite number of multiverses. Now, how on earth the scientists or cosmologists who we rely on for this theory are going to prove that is difficult, to say the least, I would suggest. how do you measure or how do you prove the existence of other universes that we'll never inhabit or get signals from? So not sure about that one. Why am I why am I bleating on about these imponderables? Well, very much ponderables. Here's another ponderable. Homo sapiens. How old are we? Do you reckon? When did we sort of take over from the Neanderthals? I believe it was about 30 or 40,000 years ago when these fellas, Homo neanderthalis, apparently were rubbed out by you and me, our ancestors, Homo sapiens. Why? Well, we won't go into that here. I have my own pet theory about this, and it doesn't depend on an opposite thumb theory, or that we could run fast on the savannah, or indeed that we could keep the top of our heads cooled while we ran away from being eaten by some carnivore. No, that's not what I am referring to. It's quite simply that what we take to be true in many instances relies on hearsay. Now, I'm not disparaging scientific evidence or the scientific method, or indeed the sort of cultural memes that we now accept as fact. It's just that they are all provisional. This was a big revelation to me when I started quite recently, because I'm writing this book on consciousness about the scientific method. It is embedded in the scientific method that all findings are provisional, including the Big Bang, including Homo sapiens, including the age of the dinosaurs, including multiverses. Everything's in a state of temporariness, really until proven otherwise, as we are finding with the Big Bang perhaps being billions of years out. So, where am I going with this? Actually, I think what I'm saying is, don't believe everything that you hear or have read if you've not got first-hand experience of it. Let's say keep an open mind and not be dogmatic. And treading gently here, I had supper with some lovely friends from the evangelical church, where we had lovely cottage pie last night, and chatting, and we are all three of us from the Christian evangelical tradition, and it was good to use some of the vocabulary that I'd almost forgotten how to use, and it was very kind and open discussion and exploratory. And I would say the difference when I decided to leave the evangelical church, I was invited to lunch by the pastor Mike Breen, who's got a very low golf handicap, and he wanted to know why I was chosen to leave, and I said, well, it's a great church, especially for young families and children, but I can't eat 3 shredded wheat. Well, he looked at me like that. What do you mean, Phil? I said, well, it's the same diet, Mike, week in, week out, and I want instead of milk, kindergarten milk, I want meat. I want to explore the mystery of God. Well, you could have thought I'd called his mother a bad thing. What do you mean? You know. You know everything you need to know about God because, of course, Jesus is my Lord and Saviour, and you have a relationship with Jesus. So it's just a done deal. There's nothing more to explore. Well, his face dropped. He still paid for the bill, which is very nice of him. But I didn't see anybody from the church except these friends last night over supper. I was, in effect, unilaterally excommunicated. And that's really not a very kind or compassionate thing to do. So I didn't fall out with them, but they fell out with me. They can practice their evangelical Christian the way they want. I'm not criticising them, but somehow I I stepped outside the bounds of the norm of what is considered the truth of the evangelicals, and it actually in practice it cost me a lot of friends and a lot of mental and spiritual sort of sadness, actually mourning almost, until I found my feet. And the difference, coming to the point, although I didn't know what the point of this was before when I started, the point is that I had to make a stand on what for me was my truth. That without being unkind or disparaging, the kindergarten faith of the evangelicals, for me, I needed to roll my sleeves up and explore the mystery of God further. And it's the difference now, I would say, objectively, between dogma and mysticism. Dogma, basically you're told what to think or what to believe. And if somebody asks me now, do I believe in God? I say, I don't need to believe in God. And they look puzzled. What do you mean? I was once collared by a young man in a blazer and a clipboard on Fargate in Sheffield doing a survey for school. And he said, do you mind if I ask you a question? I said, no, not at all. And his first question was, do you believe in God? And I perfectly reasonably said, which one? And he went away. But it's the same question to each of us. If you're talking about believing in, well, that sounds to me second-hand knowledge. In other words, somebody's telling you something, like the Neanderthals went extinct 35,000 years ago. I didn't know that. I've not explored it. It's not my knowledge, it's second-hand knowledge. I accept it, but I don't. In a way, I do believe in it, in a temporary sort of way. But when it comes to God and spiritual matters, I would say, instead of being dogmatic, swallowing that which I have been fed, or chewing somebody else's cud, as I sometimes call it, I prefer to do my own archaeological dig with my own spiritual hammer. And I'm sure you do too. That's enough for now. Ciao.